Oh, these roosters are such fun to paint. Keeping them really loose, looking for the shapes. There's so many lessons in here. So we're going to use this acrylic ink, and we're actually going to squeeze the acrylic ink up into the little glass tube, and that's what we're going to be drawing with. And it's really liberating and you'll have fun. But it might take a little bit of getting used to, so maybe try your first stroke on a spare bit of paper. Now, I'm just going to draw this very, very faintly to show you that if you want to draw to give yourself confidence, you can go over this with the ink, and you can't rub out anything, but other than the bits of the pencil that ink isn't covered by. But I'm just making some sort of rough shapes. We don't have to go into great detail, but it might help you to place it. Now, I don't draw when I do them, because what I like is if something goes wrong and you correct it, you just get so much more movement. But I'm just offering you an option, just in case that might give you more confidence to do it. But they're very, very simple shapes, and it might be worth just getting familiar by drawing the shape with a pencil on a scrap of paper first, just so that when you go in with the inks, you're familiar with the shapes that you're going to be drawing. So 2 ways. I don't want lots of detail, that's ample. Right, so first of all, we're going to make a start with the black ink. So I've squeezed that into the glass tube, and I'm just going to squeeze it out gently onto the paper. So with this particular one, I think we might start with that sort of cone shape where its head is. And I place that roughly on the paper. It's sort of just under a half down. And I put it to one side, so that hopefully everything will fit into the paper. If the worst comes to the worst, we can always cut off an edge, but we don't want to lose feet or tails and things like that. So it does make you think and look at everything against each other too. Now this looks a bit strange, doesn't it? And they never look quite right until their red combs go on. So don't worry, we're still looking at shapes. These lovely little feathers, these lovely little feathers that are all sort of straggly at the back, and then all those around its feet. And now the tail feathers, nice big, and don't be frightened to put these in. Get the shape. If something's not quite right, just draw back into it. It adds to the movement. This is the bit that I really love. Whereas if you've drawn it first, you might be tempted to be very tight and fiddly, and that's not what we want from doing this. So no, it doesn't matter if you go wrong, we can put it right. And it just looks better when you do that. So I'm thickening up a few little bits, making them darker, getting sort of some shapes in there, but not worrying or fussing too much. You have to be careful not to put your hand in this, because if you smudge it, you can't get it out. So I'm just being a little bit careful. And don't move it too much until it's dry, because it will run. And I've wrecked a few paintings where the wind's caught them and everything's run all over the place. And it's always the good ones when that happens. Such a shame. Right, now make sure that's very dry, because if it's not, when you put the red comb in, what you will find will happen is that the red touches the black, and then the black takes over the red, so you just end up with a lot of black because it's much stronger. So just make sure it's dry, give it sort of an hour, and then you can do this. So you could work your way through your other roosters and then put the combs in at the end if you wanted to. Now I've not covered it all, I've left some little bits of white showing because I thought that might be quite nice. And all that's left to do with this one, see how quick it is? Just put your signature on there. black ink again, exactly the same as before. I've sort of designed these so that if you wanted to put 3 roosters in a row, they're both outside ones can be looking in and your middle one's sort of walking forward. So this one is very easy to paint. So the first thing that I'm going to start with is that sort of comb shape of a tail. Now it's got some sticking out feathers at the top. I've placed that sort of roughly just over halfway on the paper and in the middle. So it's a good place. And then everything else can be worked out around that. So I'm making that quite dark. Those tail feathers are quite dark. And then just get that head in and the body. I've made it a little bit fatter than it actually is to make it more interesting. And wispy feathers. Just keep putting it into the pot and then squeezing the ink out. So you'll need to keep doing this. Look at the shapes all the time and sort of where they are in relation to other things. It helps you no end to see. It is a really, really fun exercise to do. So those little feet, no need to do too much for those. Long leg. And a little bit of a shadow where I anchor it down to the ground. You can darken up any areas if you want to. A little bit more detail, but not too much. The danger is to do too much, as always. So again, we've got to let that get dry, and then we can just pop in the little comb. Just an indication. And that just down the side. I've turned it to one side a little bit, tiny bit that side. And all that's left with our second rooster is to put our signatures on there. Alright, so our third hen. He really posed for the photographs. So again, we're getting the black ink, squeezing it into the tube, squeezing it out gently. Now I've started with his back because that's a good place to start. Once I've placed that, then everything else, again, it should work out. So I always try and find one thing that everything else can work around it, and you know that you can get in the head, the tail, etc. Now the neck bit is a bit like an ice cream cone, so sort of think of it that way. That makes it a lot easier. Be careful with the beak and the eye. That's the one thing that you don't want to get wrong. Just draw them in pencil if you're not sure. And if you're very scared, you can use a tiny brush just to put that beak in. And getting those lovely tail feathers in. All our roosters are different. If we want to make anything darker, we just sort of squeeze more ink into those bits. Those lovely drumsticks. Just look at the angle that the legs are. I have to make up the feet, but they're always the same with roosters and chickens. So, and now that lovely darkness in the tail, and just checking everything and get the shape of that neck that you get with those light Sussex. Just look at the direction that the feathers are going and just make a few marks, that's all. Don't overcomplicate it. Now it looks a little bit shiny at the moment, but it will dry sort of flatter and different. Just be careful not to move it at this stage. He looks very lost, doesn't he, without his comb? But we have to be patient and let that dry a little bit. And then with some red ink, exactly the same. It's dry around the area where I want to put that. So let's get that lovely big comb, and he should suddenly look transformed. I'm sort of looking at the start and the end, and then the pointy bits, which they're all a little bit different, so you can have a little bit of leeway with that. Oh, that's magnificent. Goes sort of around the eye almost. And that drops down. So we're simplifying it and quite a lot. We have a few of those white bits showing through, that doesn't hurt. And that's our trio of roosters, so just our signature, and we can go and have a cup of coffee now. I hope you've enjoyed watching.